Welcome to Happily Ever Aftermath.
The podcast where we discuss relationships in movies and our relationships with them.
I'm Polina Grunbaum.
And I'm Diana Rojek-Skonnord.
Hello, Diane.
Hey, Polina.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Yourself?
I'm doing excellent.
Good to hear. All right. We have a guest, returning guest,
I'm very excited.
from our Being John Malkovich episode,
Yes.
Ryan Skonnord.
Hello. Did I jump my
Being
cue?
Ryan Skonnord.
Yes. That is what I'm doing.
Just.
I'm really glad to be
I
here.
tried to do that too. It didn't work as well.
Don't get meta on us. All right. And we're here to talk about the Bourne Identity.
Yes.
2002.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks. It's one of those things that I got really excited. I'm like, I have to do it this way. From the writer of The Cutting Edge. On our Cutting Edge episode, I was very excited to do that. From the writer of The Bourne Identity, Armageddon, and some other movies that don't really make any sense. But now it's just like the opposite. From the writer. Okay.
That is satisfying.
It does feel
And
good.
I forgot about that.
It does feel good that it comes together
Yes.
all at once.
See,
All right.
we make sense.
No, we don't.
Oh,
Okay.
come on.
Yes. So, for those of you unfamiliar with the first of the Bourne, I don't want to say the Bourne Legacy because that actually is number 4 in the series. The Bourne series, we'll say. The story of a man, Matt Damon, salvaged near death from the ocean by what? Oh, salvaged. That's okay. Fine. You know what? I was wondering what that meant. The story of a man, Matt Damon, salvaged near death from the ocean by an Italian fishing boat.
That is a terrible
That
sentence.
is a horrible sentence. Okay.
Salvage near death?
I don't think the flag of the fishing boat is really relevant to the plot.
Mm,
The what?
They dropped him off in France. I mean,
yeah. I'm going to assume they were from France.
Yeah.
When he recuperates, the man suffers from total amnesia without identity or background. Hence the name. Except for
But they
range-
gave it away.
or it was stolen.
That's true.
Actually, he had like 12. Never
Yeah.
mind, we'll get into that.
Mm.
Except for a range of extraordinary talents in fighting, linguistic skills, and a self-defense that speak of a dangerous path. Where did I get this?
I don't know.
This is
This needs a copywriter. That needed a copy editor.
He sets out on a desperate search, assisted by the initially rebellious Marie, Franka Potente, to discover who he really is and why he's being lethally pursued by assassins. Okay, I don't
Was
care.
she really being rebellious?
rebellious? Yeah, that's not how I would phrase it.
I wouldn't phrase it
reluctant,
either.
maybe, but not rebellious.
Like, reluctant, yeah. But
Okay.
desperate for money.
I don't understand. Well, you know what? This is good.
She wanders away to buy one bottle of whiskey, and all of a sudden she's rebellious.
This is good.
You know, women. Women and whiskey. That's how you know. Women who drink whiskey. I drink whiskey.
I would say that as off as this description is, maybe we can use this to our advantage of the Bourne Identity seems kind of off as a topic for this, but anyone who listened to The Fifth Element knows that we're not about your just traditional shoehorned rom-com, blah, blah, blah.
No, just what I think you said it best. Romance in movies.
Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it
That's.
works.
I was only listening to the first part.
But Ryan, this was your selection as someone who is familiar with you as I married you. I know that you have been...
You were familiar with him before you married him, though,
Not
right?
Kind of.
A little bit.
Maybe.
Okay, well, that's good.
No, I'm familiar with him because I married him.
Oh, okay.
But I'm giving context. I am familiar with the fact that since we started this podcast, you've been straining to find an appropriate movie as a topic for conversation.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I was jazzed to be on to talk about Being John Malkovich, but that was not I was not the primary guest on that. I was not the choice in that one.
Well,
That
you were
was
the
super
primary
fun.
guest. You were our only guest.
Right, guest, yes, but not the subject.
It was Polina's pick.
Yes, it was Polina's pick. And
I
yeah,
forgot about that. For some reason, I always think it was your pick, but I don't know why. But I
didn't feel that strongly about that. I like the movie a lot. I wasn't super invested, but I guess you could say I am on this one. So yeah, like you said, Diana, for about as long as I've been listening to this podcast, which is the very beginning, I've been trying to think of what sort of relationship in a movie really spoke to me on the same level as the movies that you talk about. And the thing is that it's not that I don't get emotionally invested in love stories in fiction. It's just that I found that it never really was so much in movies. It was oftentimes more like long form fiction, like
Jim and Pam in the Office.
I was going to say
Leslie in Open Bed in Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
okay, those are Dinah's choices, by the way, not mine. See?
Yeah, I know. That's what I was saying.
So
Yeah, I know.
I
Yeah.
love them.
Those are your example. Jim and Pam is a nice story. I never watched Parks and Rec. Anyway,
it's really
yeah,
good. You should.
I know I should. But
Captain America in anyone.
Oh, we forgot to tell you. We don't let our guests speak. It's just not a thing we do.
that's fine. I don't have much to say anyway. But yeah, I find that for me to get really emotionally invested in a character or in two characters, it helps to have that kind of longitudinal relationship with it that happens over, I'm thinking mainly of TV series, but also books. And oddly enough, and this will make me sound very nerdy, but video games even more than movie, like the narrative ones. And I could go on a whole tangent about that. But I'll hold back
So, like,
on.
what are some examples of like
Make it a short tangent.
Oh.
TV movies?
Oh,
or-
don't put
or
me on the
games
spot.
that you,
Oh,
sorry. Yeah.
No, it's okay.
Board
If they
games.
come
Oh
back
my-
to you,
board games. Oh my God.
sorry. Oh my God, sorry. The whole like blue and yellow thing.
No,
oh my God.
No, Colonel Mustard. And Professor Plum.
I mean, that was the love that dare not speak its name.
That was a movie though, so.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. Wait,
God.
you haven't seen Clue?
No.
No, for later. Make
No,
Clue.
but I played the game. I was gonna say I read the book because that's usually what I say, but no, I just read the.
Well, no,
game.
it's fun. I watched it a lot.
Glue was a good movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard.
Relationship's very strained in that movie, so we can't really.
Yeah, not many happy stories there.
Well, I mean, it is about murder.
Is it?
Well, isn't it?
Yes.
No, it is. Okay, so you haven't seen it. So if you don't have any,
I'm gonna assume.
I don't have any good ones. Like
But yeah,
none
TV
that I have anything interesting to say about. But yeah, I mean, not that. Okay, maybe the other part of it is that I never really felt like, oh, I had these like really formative experiences either. It was just like, oh, this is really nice. I really feel for these two characters. I hope they make it. You know.
I actually agree. I find that I'm like much more because I think when you're involved, like a relationship is so much of like the interesting parts of relationships are the details,
Mm-hmm.
and in a movie it tends to sort of like.
it's very
In a lot of
truncated.
movies, yeah, it's very truncated, and so you'll see these little glimpses. So, in a way, I'm actually, now that thinking back, I'm kind of with you, like, because to me it sort of does get a little unsatisfying. Also, you know, I hate when a romance is shoehorned into a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's my biggest problem with Titanic, frankly, which I realize is why most people see the movie. I just want to watch the ship sink.
Yeah,
And-
right there
and
with
some
you.
would, maybe even think this particular movie, they're
Mhm.
shoehorning a romance into this movie.
Yeah, I kept reading reviews, but actually, like, it's funny. I didn't feel that way the first time,
Mm-hmm.
or this time, because I saw this movie in the theater.
This
But
felt very organic.
Yeah, that actually is basically the realization that made me think that I should bring that movie to the show. That
Yeah.
it feels very much unlike other action movies to start with in the way that it handles its love story.
yeah,
And yeah, and also just I do remember it resonating with me.
yeah,
I
Um,
also think that we would miss an opportunity if we don't mention that this movie kind of reinvented the action genre because of the faster pace, the grittiness of it, and the fact that it wasn't just ongoing long action sequences. You rewatch the car chase, and it's not like these big choreographed, spectacular spectacles. So much as just like, yeah, he's driving a Mini, and it's kind of gritty. And I got a little bit of a headache watching it because of the fast cuts.
I did too. Actually, yeah, I was saying to Brian on the way over here that I saw this movie in the theater, and
You didn't save it for air?
I tried to, but you know, I don't know.
Go ahead.
Just talk. You know me. So I watching it. I watched it in the theater, and I really actually I'm not because I'm not into action movies, as our regular listeners might know. I'm like I really think I saw it because of Matt Damon, and Franka Potente because of Run Lola Run, which we have to talk about.
Yes.
But I did find it a little like, I'm like, oh, this is why I don't watch these movies at home. Like, it was like, felt a little headachy and loud and crazy.
Well,
but I will take your word for it, though.
Well, Diana, when we saw the sequel in the theater, you were straight up like closing your eyes and looking away from the screen, if memory serves. So I remember you getting a really bad headache during that.
Well, no, the first time I saw it in the theater, the Bourne Identity, I did get a headache, and I knew how to avoid it by the time we saw the Bourne Supremacy. Because by the time the movie, I didn't like it because I got the shaky, the quick cuts and the shakiness of it. It made it so I had to be mindful of the fact that the quick cuts were going to just kind of mess with my eyesight. But I watched it on DVD, and I'm like, this movie's really good. It turns out the headache actually kind of clouded my judgment of what I thought about it. So I'm just like, wow.
But that's interesting. Yeah, it's like,
oh wow, this is really good on the small screen when I can not be freaking out about the gigantic,
But what you were saying too is like, this is the first movie. I mean, if this is true, see not many action movies. If this is true, like, this is the first movie you saw that had that. So maybe it's also that now you're used to that kind of thing.
I'm actually, well, again, I've learned to adjust accordingly. When I go to the
movies,
movies,
all of us have.
When I go to the movies, I sit in the back and off center. So if I need to, I know how to do that. But I'm also avoiding I don't see movies in 3D because of how sensitive I am to the visuals. And I'm actually hesitating seeing Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse because they're saying that the visuals of it looks like if you're in the regular screening 2D, some people think, oh my god, is this a 3D? But it's not. So I'm actually, which is unfortunate because it's supposed to be amazing. But
I mean, I kind of love immersing. Like, I get ahead, but I love immersing myself in it. So how does so what was it about? When did you encounter this movie the first time?
Well, I saw it in the theater. I was 19 years old. And I saw it with a certain young lady with whom I had been in a relationship for about a year at that point. That was Diana.
Oh, okay.
Well.
This is bitch.
I'm the bitch.
I'm the bitch.
Yeah, and like you were saying about this being really different from other action movies. If you remember when it was released, it kind of had everyone talking at the time. It was kind of big in the zeitgeist about being this like sort of trendsetter. And at the time, it was kind of impossible to have a conversation about this movie without it being compared with like the James Bond franchise. Because this was before Daniel Craig took over the role with Casino Royale. It was right at the peak of the Pierce Brosnan arc of kind of over-the-top silliness. And a lot of people saw the Bourne Identity as this really realistic breath of fresh air. It was very down-to-earth.
Not rapey?
Sure.
Not rapey. No, actually, this is a movie, I have to say. It doesn't have any of those moments where I'm like, I don't know. A few, but like nothing major. Nothing that like...
Well, it's... Okay. So I've been hearing a lot about the older James Bond movies.
Yeah.
Pierce Brosnan movies, of course, aren't really the same thing. He's aggressive. He's incredibly aggressive towards the females, but that's just... I don't know. My James Bond experience is the Pierce Brosnan ones that actually kind of dictates my age. Like
it kind of... Yeah, it was I'm a Pierce Brosnan. I saw those movies with my dad all the time, and the whole thing, it kind of creeped me out. Though I still go to see them almost every time.
And I talked to somebody this weekend talking about how her favorite James Bond was Timothy Dalton, and I'm like, yeah, you can...
Oh my god, I totally I loved Tim.
Yeah, I was about to say, okay.
Underrated.
There's somebody in, their mid-40s, so I'm just like,
Yeah, no, I did have a Timothy, there was probably my favorite is,
Daniel Craig.
Well, Daniel Craig is definitely my favorite.
You can't have all
Sean Connery. No, you're right. I can't. Okay,
George
forget
Lazenby.
it. I'm gonna stop. No, not George Lazenby. I'm gonna stop talking about Bond because now I get into a whole Rolling Stones Beatles thing.
Well, also like I would say you have
why not both?
Well, you have to look at all of the intertwined because you James Bond and Jason Bourne. In fact, this is a line in Kingsman.
Kingsman, yeah.
Yeah,
I was gonna say that.
Where the dog's name is JB. Oh, name him after James Bond. No.
Well,
Jack.
and I think
No.
the grittiness comes from too, like, it comes from, like, basically, he is struggling to. It's a movie about a man sort of having an emotional struggle,
Yeah.
right? Which is like the Daniel Craig movies, or sort of especially Casino Royale. Like they start like that is a big part of it. Maybe not Casino Royale. What's the anyway? Sorry.
No, I kind of see it.
Like there's this whole thing with him struggling with his age, right? In the not the last one, but the last one. The one with the Scotland scene.
Skyfall?
Skyfall.
Yes.
Skyfall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see a certain through line of male vulnerability in those franchises.
Yeah. He's trying to get away from just like the Gillette ad asks you to do. He's trying to get away from his toxic masculinity. Oh my God, that's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you today. I was like, I want to talk to Ryan about the Gillette toxic masculinity, but we'll have to do that off air.
Sure.
Yeah, like he's trying to get away from his toxic masculinity.
Jason Bourne is.
Well, they didn't have it back then. It was only 2002.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, they didn't discover it until, what was it, 2016?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So would assassinating people be a metaphor for toxic masculinity? Or...
I think
so. It depends on who he kills.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. And then he sees the kids and he's like, I can't do this anymore.
Right. Are we still talking about? Yes, it's wrong to disrespect women and murder people.
In that order.
And we didn't know that until Gillette told us that.
Sure.
So
yeah.
I'm glad, thank God for those razors, those overpriced razors. Now all the money I've spent on razors over the years.
It was the aughts.
So
sometimes you just have to take out a dictator. You know?
Anyway,
okay. Derailed that a bit. No. So yes, I was 19 years
Welcome
old.
To our podcast.
Yeah. So I was 19 years old, and this was a very different kind of action movie that everyone was sort of reacting to, and I felt a certain amount of resonance with it. And looking back at it, I think part of what made this movie feel kind of special was that it was very character driven. Mm-hmm. It was a whole lot just about the experiences of these two people, mainly the one person, but Franka Potente's character was she gets a lot of screen time.
Yeah.
And that's part of why I want to say that, like, this it's not I would not call it a romantic subplot, and I would not call her a love interest either. I think it's like a full it's almost like the main emotional component of the movie.
Well, I feel like in a way it's kind of the same thing as like Newsies. You know, we always torture the Newsies thing about like, oh, it was only like 10 minutes. There's a lot more than that.
The fact that there was, the character in Newsies wasn't as little as she was, I thought that was fascinating in its own right. But go ahead.
But the thing is, the romance that blossoms between the two of them is what creates a lot of the character arc of Jason Bourne, right? Like, to me, like the interesting part is sort of how their relationship like sort of does form, you're right, the spine of the emotional truth of the movie, which is that Jason Bourne is like, I have no idea who I am, and I'm not happy about it. Like, I'm not like, oh, cool, I just found out I have all this money. Oh, cool, I just found out that I'm like really good at like killing people, and I speak all these languages. This is fantastic. I have an apartment in Paris. Like, none of these things gives him any pleasure.
Yeah, and it's by necessity.
Maybe the language thing. He does seem like, this isn't kind of neat.
Oh, yeah. But it's by necessity that he works all that out through his friendship with Marie, because as he says in the movie, you're the only person I know.
Exactly.
Which is kind
when
of...
he says that, I was like, whoa.
I know, right? Yeah.
No, it kind of gave me chills. Like, so...
And
did you feel that way at the time? Like, when you saw it, like, did it feel like
I did. In fact, I was... Yeah, when I was rewatching it last night, I was remembering the way I felt the first time I saw it during one particular scene, which is right as they've finished their road trip into Paris from Marseille, I guess, and I tried to.
No, they get Zurich.
From Zurich.
It goes Marseille to Zurich.
Marseille to Zurich, yes, and then from Zurich to Paris.
I would
yes.
never try to question Polina on her European.
Yeah, yes, we're very cosmopolitan
here. No, just because that's where it's a Swiss bank account.
Right, yeah.
I can't believe I remembered something. You guys, I remembered something.
There's a little gizmo on his hip said Zurich, and that's where he has to go. That's right. So anyway, they finish their road trip, and she's dropping him off at the front of the apartment, and then it's like they're almost about to get ready to go their separate ways. And as like an audience member, it's weird because you've already kind of internalize the formula of like you're like subconsciously taking for granted that they're gonna be going through the rest of the plot of this movie together, and then it's like, oh geez, yeah, they're gonna and
it's really awkward.
And you're feeling for Jason because he's like completely adrift. He has no home to anchor himself, no other people to talk to, and you can tell that they're already forming this sort of friendship, and it really just tugs on the heartstrings. It's like, no, wait, just go in and make sure he's okay, you know.
Yeah.
It's like,
and they're kind of
don't leave him.
It's not like they're like, sure, we're gonna do this. It's like, I'm just like, I mean, if you want like tea or something, I don't know. Like they just had this whole awkward thing, but I had the same moment where I was like, what if I misremember this movie and they don't see each other again? Because you did have a moment where you're like, how are they going to make it into the apartment? Like genuinely, like they're sitting in this car together, and being in a car together is a very intimate thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's especially at a Mini, it's a very small space.
Yeah.
And like there was a moment where it was like, it doesn't really make sense for them to end up in the apartment together.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it makes no sense for them not to end up in the apartment together. And like you see her and him like weighing those two things. Like first off, he's like, I don't know what I'm getting this human being into. Like you really see a lot more of that. Like, I don't know. When I read the reviews, like they kind of were like, yeah, Matt Damon wasn't that great. But actually, like maybe I'm projecting like a lot into that situation. And I think she is definitely like, you can see everything on her face.
Yeah,
Maybe
she's a great
less on
actress.
his.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's fantastic. And maybe less on his, but still, like you really do feel that sense of being in this small car, and it can go. You really had a moment where it could go either way.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and
did you feel that?
I did, and I really felt like
Not entirely, because
okay.
Well, and also I'll get into it more when we talk about the the sequels.
Mm-hmm.
But I have similarly how Jason Bourne can go into a restaurant and memorize all of the license plates, and I can tell that this guy over here can handle himself well at a fight, and the best place for you to find a gun would probably be in the box over there. I also go into a restaurant and say like, okay, well, this is where I can get some water, this is where the bathrooms are, if I need to get out of here really quickly, if I want to make sure that I'm the one who's paying the bill, I better get to the cashier very quickly, because I know that when this person arrives...
Thank you for my burrito, Diana.
Oh, that was
Diana will claw your eyes out trying to get to the check.
Very, very... Yeah, she handles it really well.
Oh shoot! What was my point? His ability to kind of analyze a situation. Seriously, where was I going with that?
I don't know. I had an answer.
Did you have a moment to the
answer? Yeah, repeat the question.
Like when they were in the car, they dropped us off at the apartment, and you had that moment where you weren't sure. Mm-hmm. Like I was saying that, like,
okay, I got it.
You really had a sense, even though, like it dictates.
Well,
like,
and also
logic dictates that they have to go on to the movie.
I was also at this place. If you were 19, then I was 19 or 20 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still just kind of deep-rooted into trying to figure out what's going to happen next in a movie. So in analyzing that situation the way I analyze a restaurant, for me, it was just like, okay, one of a couple of things is going to happen. Either they're not going to go their separate ways just yet. Either she's going to see like somebody weird following him and she's going to go in and help him, or, something's going to happen to where she's going to be taken hostage because one of the people coming after him is going to think that she's a pawn to use to get to him, something like that. They're not done yet.
Yeah,
that's
plot-wise, certainly.
Plot-wise.
But in terms of the character's motivation of wanting to come in, well, I'm gonna definitively answer your question that yes, because I having watched the movie again, I feel like they were already in the bonding process at that point.
Totally. You mean the Bourning process?
Oh,
thank you.
Okay.
They were forming. Oh, I forgot. Identity.
The Bowering.
The
Bowering process.
Yeah, we'll split the difference.
The the hunting process. Oh no, that's no good. Ethan Hunt.
Good Will Hunting? What?
No, Ethan Hunt.
Okay.
Damn it. I was the scene to me. Well, no.
They were.
I was doing the whole like Mission Impossible and
Yes, okay.
James Bond. And,
Okay.
Yeah.
I took it back to a
I
Matt
see
Damon
what
movie.
you're saying.
Anyway,
It's not your fault.
so the yeah, I think it's interesting that they got the big reveal out of the way, I guess fairly early in their arc, where I guess they were like sort of in the 2/3 mark of the road trip, and Jason decides to come clean and just tell her that he has amnesia and that he remembers all these things that he can't account for.
Oh, when you say big reveal, I thought like which one? The one where he kills people?
No, the between the two of them of his secrets. And yeah, I think there's two components to that. The first is that it places Jason in this very vulnerable position where he's basically just casting about looking for like anyone that he can just like share this secret with, because up to this point he's been subconsciously beating up police officers and evading guards and such, and just trying to keep away from keep this situation that he's in from getting himself hurt. And it's this is someone he can share the truth with. And then the second part of it is that trust is romantic.
Yes.
This is that he chose to trust her, and I thought that was sweet.
I actually did think that when he decided to do that, I'm just like, oh wow, he's opening up to her.
Yeah, and he has that moment where he's like, "Here we go."
Pause.
Yeah.
Like, all right. Like he kind of says, I don't think he says like, "F it." Well, I'm just gonna tell you, or something like that. And those weren't the exact words.
No, I believe it was. I think that was the one allocated F word for the PG-13 movie.
Yeah, I saw it on like Cinemax because I live in the 90s.
As the movie was progressing, I was actually looking at him driving. They're meet cute. She's angry in an embassy. He's trying to evade authorities.
Adorable.
I think
He's scaling a wall.
Okay,
I almost threw up. That was hard to watch.
That's difficult.
I always find the heights things hard to watch.
Well, actually, the fact that he's gripping the wall is like I could feel pain in my forearm.
I always do. I was watching Bob's Burgers, and there was an elevator scene, and it's a cartoon.
No, I know
it's a cartoon. It's a cartoon. I'm saying that to myself, and I was like, Sean's like, it's a cartoon.
So like an elevator in the cartoon.
Yeah, like he was holding on, he was standing on an elevator shaft, and then the elevator goes down. He's standing on top of an elevator shaft, and now he has to hold on.
Well, just in general, that gives me upsetness.
Oh, upsetness.
I could watch a movie where somebody's on a plane. I'm not happy. Don't care for flying.
Yeah, doesn't bother me. But
right. So after their meet cute in the embassy, which is actually not true, they meet outside, and it's filmed, and it's they got people on their tail. But I think it's just really interesting them in the car together, the conversation. Well, the one-sided conversation that she jokes about.
And it's such a great moment.
It is an incredible moment. But I wrote at the end of that scene, I'm just like, it's like they're on their first date.
Yeah,
and it's really nice. And I wasn't like writing this down to be like cutesy on the podcast so much as like I'm really watching this run parallel with actual relationships developing.
And you guys were together for a year. I was gonna say, like, was it an early date?
6 months.
No,
when I watched the movie recently. I was not doing it back in 2002.
No, I mean like when I was trying to make a parallel between your relationship, but I can't. I saw this movie in the theater. I think this is it. So this could have been the second one, and if so, I apologize. But really, a good story is much better than the truth. So my friend and I, and I'm not going to out her. We both have a crush on Matt Damon, which we're both kind of slightly embarrassed about, but he looks really good in a sweater. And
that wasn't even a very good sweater.
I know, that's the thing. It looks really good in even bad
fisherman
sweaters.
sweater.
Oh yeah, fisherman, an actual fisherman sweater, a sweater that belongs to an actual fisherman.
Those were the nicest damn fishermen ever.
Oh my god, they were so nice.
Is that just like European hospitality?
Well, he was working for them. There was a scene where he's helping them with the nets and stuff, so maybe they felt he owed him some wages.
I'm sure you're like people like. That's kind of a pay it forward thing. Like, what if you are a person floating in the ocean because you got separated from your ship? Like,
Yeah, the Code of the Sea or something.
I don't know.
Well, also,
any of our listeners who actually know whatever the Code of the Sea or its equivalent, please let us know.
European maritime regulations.
Yeah, European maritime. I mean, yes, they were so nice.
Right. Sorry, you were saying.
But
sweaters.
So we were like, so the reason that I ended up seeing it was one, Matt Damon. Who looks so young in this movie. I was not prepared for that. And
he had a baby face, and that was before all of his baby movies.
Exactly. Yeah. Let me get that. Franka Potente.
Marie.
I'm so sorry. Marie was in Run Lola Run, which I loved so much. Loved.
She screams a lot in that movie.
Yes. Oh, so good. I haven't seen it since it came out, so I should probably I was going to re-see it, but I didn't have time. That was my bad. But, so it was those two people. To me, it was mostly, I mean, I think publicly I would have said, it's her. I just love her because I loved Run Low Run because that was socially acceptable. But I really had a huge crush on Matt Damon. And I have to say, I was like, yeah, I see why. He's really, really sweet in it.
Yeah, and I kind of went through the inverse. I think I went and I went to see Run Lola Run as a result of seeing this movie.
That's
so
hysterical.
yeah,
oh, that's
like I went and got the DVD someplace.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
So
good movie.
Well, if
She's
I may, I'm pretty sure that this was around, like, there's a
She kind of plays the same character, but in an American.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, sort of a similar archetype, maybe.
I mean, like a flattened version, like the Gypsy.
There is a roller coaster effect of the careers of Ben Affleck and Matt Damon in the late 90s and early 2000s, where it's just like, oh, wow, you know, Ben Affleck's in Armageddon, he's on top, you know, and then Matt Damon's in The Legend of Bagger Vance, so he's at the bottom, and then, oh, wait, no, Ben Affleck's in Reindeer Games, so he's down there at the so I think this is one of Matt Damon's peaks.
Yes, again. This is when he starts climbing.
Yeah, this is him climbing again because, of course, I have to make reference to this. As Paul Rudd said in 40-Year-Old Version, he is rocking the shit in this movie.
Oh my God, yeah,
he really is.
No, he's like a great. Yeah, that's the thing. I was not prepared for that.
Yeah, and I just thought it was really.
I didn't really see
this was
any
like
Matt Damon movies other than like. You know, Good Will Hunting.
And this was like a career breakthrough at the time, right? This, like, I hate to even put it this way, but I remember him being seen as like a lot manlier after this role.
Yes. Well, he's pretty manly.
Yeah.
It also doesn't help. Ocean's 11 came out fairly close to it.
Right after it, right?
Yeah,
like 03, I think.
Yeah. So you've got, you know, this back-to-back.
So he's back.
Yeah, Bourne, you know, situation. So I think it's pretty cool.
And then there was like that whole anyway, I forget it. I'm not gonna mention it. It was a Sarah Silverman. I'm fucking Matt Damon. I loved that whole
I'm sorry, but it's true. Yes, I may know some of the words to the song. And the subsequent response.
So are we quoting the curse words or not?
Okay. I think we are.
I'm not imagining it's you. That's just one of those things that's like, oh, he's got a sense of humor too.
Oh yeah,
I like it.
He's smart.
Yeah, no, he's not.
I mean, that's the equivalent. He's smart.
So, there is this movie that I'm kind of ashamed to bring up, but it's called Leap Year, and it's Amy Adams, and it has a kind of a feeling of one of those movies where, well, I don't know for her, but definitely her love interest in that movie, the actor who played it, Matthew Good, signed on because he's like, wait, I get paid a lot of money to not go far from where I live? Yes, sign me up for this movie. There's this whole thing where it's the by the numbers rom-com where she's in Europe, she's trying to like get through, but she's really lost, and he's the one who's begrudgingly taking on this journey, and they're crammed in this tiny car together, and a whole bunch of mishaps happen. So imagine this is the rom-com, The Bourne Identity, but with the gender switch. So the whole time I'm just like, they're trapped in a tiny car together. Oh, well, now the car's gone because, you know, bad things and stuff like that. Well, see, in this instance, they're being chased by assassins and government officials. In Leap Year, I believe she forgets to put the brake on, and then it goes down a cliff and then into a lake.
I mean, both, you know, we've all experienced that point in our relationships where both of those things happen, and it's really a crossroads. You find out that your boyfriend is an assassin,
And true to life, I made Diana start using our parking brake.
Accurate. I will
yeah.
cop to that as we're being recorded.
I don't drive.
So, one of the things that I thought was really important. So, I believe this is after the first assassination attempt of him in his apartment. Forgive me if I get it wrong, but there's this point where he wants her to go, and he's just saying, "I can't do this. I don't know what's happening, but I need to figure this out." And she just grounds him by saying, "So figure it out." And then the movie moves into the second place. So instead of him just wandering, trying to get here and again getting trapped, she brings him back to, it's just like, I have to figure this out.
Yeah, he's
So
freaking
do
it
it.
out, and she's
grabbing
freaking out, and she's going, yeah.
You're giving me a look right now as though that
That is actually a
resonated
thing
with.
that happens in our relationship. Like,
Well,
yeah, it's not
Is
even
that-
the thing you say. It's
Because-
the moment of like, whatever it is, we're gonna do this. Okay, go back.
I'm
Come
not
back.
going to say that all good things that Marie did for Jason Bourne in this movie is a perfect example of all the good things that I do in our marriage.
Well-
I'm saying, let me finish. I'm saying that is a deep-rooted thing that makes a successful relationship.
Yes.
Your partner. And I was going to say this earlier. Your partner, because I don't think of Marie as his love interest. I think of her as his partner in this
I agree.
movie. And I don't think of this as romance. I think of this as intimacy.
Yeah,
between the two of them.
I think you're totally right.
Also, I'm trying to use very special words so the dudes don't like turn off the podcast and go like, "No, man."
Well, you're stealing my material here. I was going to say something very similar.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is something that you and something that I managed to glean from this particular movie something that you also thought of?
Are you gloating?
Okay, why don't we do a thing of who said it best? So then Ryan says it his way, and then we vote.
Well,
I'm not running a Twitter poll.
I'm running a Twitter poll. Actually, I get to decide. I'm the third person. Yay!
well, Diana, I mean, unfair advantage. You do know that I chose this movie for a reason, and
Matt Damon?
for reasons.
Matt Damon is your happy place. It's okay. It's my happy place too. It's what we have in common. We have a lot of things in common.
Why is that a place?
No joke.
I've never met him, so he could be a place, it could be a person, it could be an animal. I don't really know.
Welcome to
I've
Matt
never
Damon,
met him.
Indiana.
Yeah, no joke. I seriously did have quite a crush on Franka Potente for a while after I saw this movie, but that is, yeah,
Did
I know
you have
she's
more
great.
of a crush after you watched Frank Run Lola Run?
It didn't hurt.
No.
No, not at all.
I had a huge crush on Franka Potente going into this, and Matt Damon. So the whole
Mhm.
the whole movie to me was just
Just a great
It
movie.
was swoony.
Seriously, she screams a lot in that movie.
Run
In
Lola
a
Run.
good way.
Yeah, no. In
No?
the middle of the run.
I didn't
Oh
mind
really?
it.
I don't know.
Right.
No, she cheats at roulette by screaming, I think.
Yeah.
I wasn't.
yeah.
It was very
Yeah.
metaphorical.
I don't like
For
it.
cheating?
She's living out loud, man. Speaking of truth.
That's a different movie altogether.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I didn't read the book.
Holly Hunter.
Oh yes.
Anyway, yes. So 19-year-old Ryan watching this movie, and I was just getting into the point where the relationship that I was in real life was very stable, or at least that's how it felt to me. And
No, you know better.
learn. no, I think I was.
No,
I-
it's not.
Well, the relationship was stable. I was unstable.
Yes, well, so was I at that time. So was I in 2002, to be fair.
But I was learning certain lessons as a young man does in his first real relationship, when you get past the phase of oh, this is someone that you go on dates with and do stuff with and enjoy the dating process with, and when it turns into, as you said, more of a partnership, you start to experience the things that when maybe you were a love-struck teenager, you didn't really think you were looking forward to so much, but just the grounding, the emotional support. And so let the record reflect that I am not going to say that I was in any way like the character of Jason Bourne at the time. I'm not I'm not going to compare myself, but
Do you see yourself more as a Marie?
no. I did see certain parallels in that. At the time, I was in this very challenging academic environment where I, was pushing myself to do certain things that I thought I had a certain level of raw natural capability, and without getting into a whole sob story about why I had a tough time in college. I was, as some people do when you go through life as a bright kid and you kind of like coast through high school and don't really learn any like real like life skills, and then you try to
study
do
skills,
or like no study skills whatsoever, and you get good grades anyway, and then you get into college and it's like, oh, I have all this raw ability, I should be able to like do these really hard things, and then I like struggle and fail, and I remember looking to Diana for, just like, for lack of a better way to put it, I was like dumping some of my weakness on her, and looking to her for not just emotional support, but like really practical support. And, like up to that point in your life when you're a kid, it's like, oh, you have these support systems and like your parents or whatever for like, I, don't know what classes I'm going to take or what I'm going to do. And, at first she was just like the girl that I went to the movies with, and then before I knew it, she was the girl I was like coming to with all these real problems, and looking to for that grounding and just sort of being a real person that you share these like adult things with. And I think there's a certain parallel to where like you're in this extreme situation, or like what to you at the time feels like an extreme situation. Like looking back on it, it's like, oh, I was just a dumb kid, but at the time everything feels like it's the most important thing in the world.
The thing about your 20s.
Yeah,
I mean, I feel the same way.
Exactly.
Oh my God, that was a problem.
Yeah, and but when it does feel like it's a problem, just being able to look to this person to, you can be vulnerable, you can trust them, and you can look to them for like, I just need help with like basic real life stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when I would start screaming at him, figure it out. Go figure it out.
I think there's like, I think I probably mentioned this, but I think there's kind of an unspoken rule in my marriage. And I mean, before it was a marriage as well, like, my partnership is that only one of us can freak out at one time. And it's like a very fluid thing. And it kind of is something that it's not, and it's something we fell into because we both have a very hard time making decisions. And we both are, we both have anxiety issues, and, we both spin like a lot of humans do. And I think, one of the things is that even if we're both actually freaking out at a given time, we sort of both, I think, just silently assess like which one sort of is allowed to freak out at this moment.
Yeah, and you do it without even like communicating it. It just becomes part of the rhythm, right?
And you say something like that, and I think that's why that is intimate, because it's not what she says to him. Mm-hmm. It's that actually she's also freaking out.
Yes, and that's actually makes this a really good template for the way this is structured in the movie.
That they're right to freak out.
Yeah, you have one character freaking out because someone just burst in the apartment with a gun, and then you have the other character freaking out because he has amnesia, and they just sort of fall into this rhythm, and it's really sweet.
And then
actually,
after he figures it out, she goes back to freaking out.
Yeah, and why wouldn't she? Yeah,
he physically carries her, and he lets her like throw up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he had a choice in the matter.
No, I know that, but even like, I mean, there's actually like, there's several moments, and you and I sort of talked about this earlier. There's several moments where before they become romantically involved, like before they kiss and presumably have sex.
How are you not presuming that?
I don't know. It's not shown. I don't want to assume. I want to assume maybe they just cuddled.
Okay.
I'm going to say that they didn't. Hey, that's my job. You can't switch roles on me mid-podcast. Is this the new thing now?
As long as only one of you is doing it at a time.
It's like, bow, chicka, bow, bow.
I believe the music is...
Yeah. Please
let me stop.
No, are you kidding?
Well, just how what he was talking about extreme circumstances in his life, and I'm just like, don't start doing that right now. He's having a tender moment on the mic. Don't do it. Don't do it.
The Extreme Ways song is what you were going for there.
Yes.
So he
that or a terrible pterodactyl impression.
Sexy.
Oh God! Now I'm just gonna quote Airplane. Pterodactyl. Okay, so back to the tender moment that we were discussing earlier because we're adults.
No,
But like I just really felt like there were many moments where he like, you see him as this assassin, right? You keep like where he's like suddenly has these like mad assassin skills, whatever those. I'm sure those actually have a name, but you see, and then so you see his body and his hands, moving to like, hold a gun really well and stuff a lot of money in passports and do a banking bag really well. I wouldn't even know how to handle a banking bag.
They just give you bags in those banks, by the way. That is a detail that...
I've only seen that in movies, and I totally also obsessed about that detail. I'm like, did you see that they had a banking bag holder?
It's so
that,
fancy.
Like, allowed you to like leave the bag open?
First time I saw it, I thought it was a trash can with a really fancy liner.
It's
I've seen like other movies where where people would go into the safety deposit box and they give you like a bag, but
well, this is like.
But wouldn't it be obvious? You have a bag from a bank.
Well, this
is it supposed to be a secret? I mean, most people aren't taking like illegal forged passports out of there. Well, actually,
also,
I don't know if a lot of them are.
Wouldn't you feel really subconscious with a bright red banking bag?
Like, yeah, that is. I mean, anything you put in there would be like worth stealing. Is what you're saying? Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, this is the modern version of the.
Sorry, I was going to say something tender, and I went back to weird logistics, obsessing about logistics.
Well, no, this is the modern canvas bag with the dollar signs on there.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I'd like to deposit my bag of money, please.
Yes.
I was just thinking, how much does it cost to rent one of those safe deposit boxes that they're throwing all these like freebies at you, like the really nice bag every time you come in?
About that. This is the
that bag looks like not cheap.
This is like the magnets that you get from podcasts.
Oh, and okay, is it okay if we skip ahead because about the bag, Diana? No.
Well, it depends on. Oh no, save that.
Okay.
I know what you're thinking.
Yes.
Save it. Okay, so. If I want to step back for a second, what you were talking about with the fact that she is the one who tells him to get it together, and he's the one who's able to take care of the assassin that breaks in there, and actually, if we skip even forward to when they're in the farm of her ex and his kids,
that was like a stepbrother, I think, or
really, I thought it was like an ex-boyfriend of some kind. But
no, I thought it was a relative.
Oh, I have no idea.
I don't know.
I heard them say like stepbrother and then half brother, and I was trying
That's what I thought. It was like a relative, but not really a relative.
Okay.
I mean, not like a blood relative.
Well, okay. So they're in this
some
area.
guy.
It's just the fact that he is able to switch on in certain circumstances when she needs to switch off. You're talking about the back and forth, and it's just it was there, and it's very apparent. And again, we're talking about extreme circumstances of them fleeing and him having to fight for their lives, but it's there in a real relationship, and I think it's very equal give and take, and I think that's why it works really well.
I think that's the thing. It's not one of those movies where you're like, as you said, it's not the love. I always feel like the love interest is like the thing that they stick in there for the ladies.
And in turn, things that he gets to stick something into.
Yeah, exactly. Despite, I mean, not even just visible, but like emotionally, right? It's like, it's kind of the blank canvas. It's like it's like a sort of a squishy sort of thing. That
like even at best, it's something
space.
for him to bounce his character development off
That's
of.
What yeah. It's like bread. No, dough before you bake it. Sorry, I want to close off because I'm trying to be better about opening conversational threads and then never closing them. But I was saying that, like, I think in several times in this movie, he goes from, you see him doing these, kind of very physically extreme things. Mm-hmm. And then just like you're saying that he switches really, he's also extremely physically tender with her. Like there's this moment, she dyes her hair.
Right.
And he like
For
does it
practical purposes,
for
because they're trying
practical
to
purposes.
evade
yeah,
police.
not because she's
Yeah.
like, well, since we're here, it's been 6 weeks, and the gray really starts to show around.
Well, they have that
then.
wanted poster where they like digitally change the color of their hair, and we were joking about. Well, you're just
yeah.
looking through. They're like, oh, this one looks nice. We should.
Yeah, I know.
Well, if this is a rom-com, then this is the salon montage.
Yeah.
I want to try bright red. I have a good feeling.
Which I find interesting. It's like, I'm sure she knows how to dye. Like, her hair is dyed. Like, her hair is
That's
dyed,
a good point. Yeah.
Like, in different colors. Like, it's not a natural color. So I'm like that is kind of a lovely thing that he does it for her when obviously she knows how to do this herself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's dyed her hair 4 different colors.
Now, the hair cutting on the Diana had an opinion about that.
Oh.
I wrote down that I didn't buy it back then, and I don't buy it now.
No.
Where he's just like, hey, clump of hair, cut, clump of hair, cut, smash cut. Oh, well, it's not the greatest haircut in the world, but it's definitely
pretty good.
Not good. Yeah, it's good.
I would never. No one would let. I would never let someone else do that, especially the way he was doing it. It wasn't like he's like, okay, I'm gonna, because I call bullshit on that one too. I mean, I knew what would happen because they never, whenever they do that, they always, and it's like, okay, it's an action movie. It is a fantasy. Of course, she's not gonna have a terrible haircut, but like, they keep
Clumps.
like he just cuts clumps, and she's just like sitting there like, sure, this is what you do, instead of like, I'm gonna take the scissors and I'm at least gonna do the front, and then maybe I need your help with the back, but no, don't do this.
It makes me wonder if in her adventurous Euro hipster lifestyle, if that's like the first amateur haircut she's ever gotten.
Yeah, no,
Probably not. No, you think-
exactly.
yeah.
That's the thing. Probably not, but still. You think she would cut her own hair at some point with her adventurous European lifestyle where she has no money?
There's 2 parts to the movie right about there, because it's you talk about the intimacy of him dyeing her hair and cutting it, and then that's the part where she starts to move in and become physically intimate with him at that point, and that's when they start kissing, and then they have did they have sex? They didn't have sex. I don't know.
loved
Polina.
their first kiss.
Oh, their first.
Oh my god, I loved their first kiss.
It was-
Oh, it was very gradual.
Like it was very.
Yeah.
He asked for consent.
He asked for her
And
consent,
listened.
like 3 or 4 different times.
Yes.
Yeah.
And gives her an out each time. Like,
Yeah.
hey, do you want to come up? You don't have to if you don't want to when they get to the apartment. And then when he says, you need to go, and then she decides to put her seatbelt on and say, no, I'm in this with you.
Yeah.
He is all about consent in this. Well, maybe
All
not
about
all
consent.
about. But
Consent can be sexy.
not if you're watching 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh god, no, nothing sexy about 50 Shades.
Sign my contract. Also, I'm sexy. No, what I wanted to...
I own all these things. Oh, look, you own a thing.
I own all these passports.
What is your name? What I think
What do I call you?
Master. What I thought was kind of important about after they have sex, presumably, it's still called into question right now.
No, it's not.
Of course it's
I'm not-
not. I'm giving you an out, Polina.
No, thank you.
I'm Matt Damon in this scenario.
Look, they have a lovely relationship. It's not sullied by physical desire.
What? Who said it was sullied? It's enhanced.
I'm just trying. I'm trying to do you.
Ouch! That hurts so hard. This is Wonder Woman all over again. They only cuddled that night. Anyways.
Not saying a word.
Well, okay. What I think
50
was...
Shades of Grey has changed you. That's all I have to say.
I think it's changed everybody.
Not for the better.
What I think is really great about that scene is, he's looking at her, but at the same time, she cracks this joke about, oh, I wiped everything down and everything like that. She's like, oh, should I just not touch anything? And she's, teasing him, and he cracks that smile for the first time, and it's kind of amazing. But what I think is more important is there's just something I got out of that is such a moment of marriage. It's just like, honey, I cleaned up everything, and should I not use anything? It's like, no, honey, that's perfectly fine. But seriously, if you're gonna do that, can you put the dish in the dishwasher when you're done?
Yeah,
with
like
it?
I was gonna say that so reminded me of us checking out of a hotel room, because we are both super paranoid about losing possessions, and we have this ritual whenever we're leaving a place that we've been staying, where we basically just like toss through it like it's a crime scene, like turn the furniture over and look behind everything. everything and inside the bed
We
sheets.
call it a dummy check.
Mm.
Oh, well,
Check inside. This is the thing. Check inside the fucking pillowcase.
we don't go that far, but we do check into drawers that we know we never put anything into.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
do that too.
And also, it's kind of like we're SWAT. Bathroom clear.
Yeah.
Bed clear.
Yeah.
I wish I was joking.
No, the reason, because I usually travel with like a book or a Kindle, and I'll put it under my pillow. Like I'll keep it under my pillow.
Mhm.
Because you want to give yourself something to do as you're freaking out on the way out.
No, it's stupid, but that's what I do at home.
Pillow clear.
And so I've left my Kindle in a pillowcase.
Oh yeah, I felt like I was nearly going to do that in a room once where I had to travel with my expensive work laptop, and I was really paranoid about theft because there was no safe, so I like hid it really cleverly and had to
And then
don't leave it because I put it like the easiest place to forget it. So
early
yeah.
on, like yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, and these are these like little things we teach each other, through the
Yeah.
marriage and stuff like that, which also goes back to when they're going to get the bill at the hotel that he was supposedly dead at, and he's walking her through it. This is the closest we get to a rom-com montage where he's telling her, like, oh, if you go in there, make sure you're going fast and don't make eye contact, but if you do this, and I will count the steps and tell me like how many this is happening.
He's
And-
basically sending her to assassin boot camp.
right, but all she's
Think like an assassin in one afternoon.
but she's just capturing the
It's
flag.
like an
right now.
Airbnb experience.
She's not killing,
Well, yeah, well,
A
that's it's when you go to shore and sheep
More like
shores.
assassin day camp.
Yeah, assassin day camp.
but it just
It's important to share your interest with your loved ones.
that's actually what I was getting at. He's kind of giving her the layout of something that he knows very well, like the back of his hand. He's just like, okay, honey, when this is happening, go ahead and do this and do that, and But of course, she gets into it. Not only does she do it, she does it her own way, but she's just as effective, if not more.
I actually loved that because I kept being like, oh, this is when I'm going to start hating him because he's going to get all pouty. But he kind of had a moment of like, wait, but that's actually a really good idea.
Almost a little bit embarrassed.
Almost a little embarrassed, but then like, well, did the job. This is good. She's smart.
Which means he's healthier than I am, because I would
That's
be like,
totally,
hey,
yeah, me
what?
too.
uh,
Or later on, well, you wouldn't have felt that way if you'd done. You wouldn't. you would have known how big that. You would have known how big that lobby is if you counted the steps the way I asked you to.
just like,
Or I guess that's one way to do it.
okay, fine. Why don't you jump on a yacht and try to kill a dictator?
Yeah.
Yeah, but besides being a really funny gag, it is one of those like little real moments, like the thing about a romantic partnership that they don't tell you in like the typical romantic movie
Yeah.
is that you get the benefit of twice as many perspectives, and that's
Exactly.
nice. And it's not that among the gritty fist fights, that's another way that this movie is just low key realistic. I think that's kind of funny. So.
Yeah.
And he didn't
I
get
agree.
jealous that she flirted her way to get it.
No, I didn't even think of that.
That's
That's a good point.
pretty sure he's more focused just on like the mission.
Yeah.
In which case, yay.
And she
Accomplished.
clearly has like that's the thing. She's really street smart.
She's savvy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah. And
No,
so
yeah.
I think there's a certain
She's more capable than just.
yeah.
She's no damsel.
No.
Which is
And
Great.
that's actually the nice thing is when she is being when she first realizes what's happening and she is kind of being a damsel a little bit. She's just like she kind of feels like she's gonna faint. She throws up and stuff.
I'd call that more being a civilian.
Yeah, and but that's the thing. It's a normal reaction. It's like a normal human reaction. And because I don't remember. I mean, I saw this movie, but it's not like I'm obsessed with it or I saw it a million times. I was like, oh, I was worried because it was early. I was like, oh, this is gonna be the thing where she gets kind of, demurred, and like she just gets she's gonna be the damsel. That's what I was worried about, and I was like, oh, maybe I misremember this, but it's like a moment where she's being human. She's having a human reaction, and it's not a sign that she's weak. And I also love that, like, what she does to deal with this is totally what I would do. She buys a fifth of whiskey. I was like, I love you. You're like me.
Yeah, it's it's not all of us can just pop a Klonopin and be okay with it. Gotta go with your over the counter.
Yeah, we can say it's not always easy to get Klonopin.
Yeah. All right. So
Yeah.
here we go. Important question in this very gritty action
We
movie.
didn't even talk about how it ended, just realized.
Oh, does Does it matter?
No, see the movie.
Are we going to talk about the bag
Well,
in the ending, or
it's part
is that going to tie into it? Okay.
It's going to tie into what I was going to say.
Oh, good. Okay.
Okay, fine. So in the end, he definitely kills people. Right, all the actiony crap.
Well, they
So
part
they
ways for a
separate,
while,
yeah.
and then there's a big thriller climax where Marie's not really around, and
Yeah, there's a climax after the Clive Owen tries to
And
come after the
that's a
flag.
different
Right.
podcast.
Yeah.
That's our judging assassin concepts podcast.
Well, that's just it
which
though.
we
Is
don't
that
have.
she's not really in it, so it's just like, hey, he's going after. What
Well,
he
yeah,
is.
he's basically what he's trying to do is he's trying to get freedom. Like after she leaves, he's just trying to get freedom.
yeah, and he insists that she go someplace safe because he feels he's exhausted his ability to keep her safe. So
Exactly.
Well, also she would kind of hold him back if she would be collateral damage or an anchor if she tried to go there with him.
Yeah,
So
it's not practical.
No.
And plus, that was the point where there was finally someone that she knew, so she at least had someplace to go, and
Yeah, there was someone else who was gonna help her.
Mm-hmm.
that kind of symbolic family environment that sort of teased this other side to him where he's interacting with the children, and then that ties in with what got him out of the assassin business in the first place. And
And he
His
remembers.
biological
And
clock.
he remembers. Yeah. And that's the other reason I have a crush on Matt Damon. He has a biological clock.
Okay.
I love you, Matt Damon.
Diana, I'm sorry, I think you were building to something about the ending.
Just just what our podcast is about. When did they fall in love? Did you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. So, when I was considering this question, I was thinking an awful lot about the stuff that made the relationship feel really meaty, and what made it feel like a real partnership, which is what kind of like came later in the movie. And I was thinking about like, well, what are the parts of the movie that show that they can really rely on each other? But if you want to talk about when they're really falling in love, I think it comes at sort of the end of that whole bonding experience that I was describing earlier. And what really feels like the fulcrum of the movie to me, where it like really clinches it, is that moment that I think you mentioned, Diana, where the assassin has just burst into the apartment and Jason fought him off and they're about to flee, and this is just after Marie has started to fear for her own safety because there was that dossier with her picture in it, and now she's wrapped up in this too. And Jason is just trying pretty hard to convince her to get out of the car and go to the police. And it's last chance, Marie, and she just buckles her seatbelt. And that on the surface, maybe it's because she doesn't trust the police to keep her safe anyway, or they, like in the French police force, really protect her from CIA assassins. Does she trust authority because she is living this nomadic lifestyle, et cetera, et cetera? But really, that's just the moment where they're in it together, and she's choosing to be with him, and for better or for worse, like there's no going back after that, and that's what really felt like it for me. And it was a very dramatic moment too. Just exchange a few words, and then just that silent look, and then that awesome Paul Oakenfold music kicks in, and they have a kick-ass car chase. It's very, very, very thrilling on several levels.
Because you're not sure when she, like, you can't tell if she's, for a second, you don't know if she's grabbing. She's trying to get out of the car, or she's grabbing the seatbelt.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Is that both on both ends?
How's that?
Well, it's like, when did they fall in love? Are you saying that it happened at the same moment? Because I could say how that could be very clearly her moment, but
I think I'm going to say yes, because I definitely detect that Jason doesn't want her to leave either. I think he was trying to convince her to leave because he was doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. But you just know, like everything before that point, like it was pretty clear that he needed, well, anyone, but mainly, again, she's the only person he knows. She's not only his only friend, but the only person who can be his friend at that point. Mm-hmm. I don't believe for a second that he really wanted to go back to being completely isolated. So in my interpretation, I have to think that there was a bit of relief for him when she decided to stay.
Got it. Got it.
What's
I'm
yours?
gonna jump in next because Ryan is very desperate for me to bring up this little point here.
No, that's,
Well, twice now.
I just want to make sure we don't forget it.
It's not
Because I was very impressed that you caught this. I've seen this movie many times in the past, 17 years that it's been out, and I never noticed this detail.
And it's an IMDb trivia, so.
Is it? Oh, man.
Yeah, okay, so at the very end, after the big climax of the movie, he has told Marie to just go and hide and just disappear. And he's taught her well, wipe down everything, get rid of everything. And so when he finally gets what he's after at the end of this movie, and of course there's all these sequels, so he'll never get everything always, but he has left the whole situation with Chris Cooper and Julia Stiles as characters, and now these people aren't coming after him anymore, quote unquote, allegedly. He finds her, they're in Greece, I want to say.
They're in Greece. Yeah.
She's, when he sent her away, he gave her all the money, less, what was it, like
$30,000.
$30,000, so he can have enough money to make sure that he can accomplish what he needs to. And he tells her to disappear. She has, I guess, she's opened up this shop where she rents mopeds, and I guess
It's a coffee shop.
Coffee,
It's
yeah, exactly.
Or
Little
wine bar.
what things
whatever.
for tourists and what have you.
Yeah.
And
Cafe.
he finds her there, and that's their wonderful moment at the end of this movie. And I didn't notice it until we watched it for the podcast. There is a planter made of the bag with all the money, the bank bag, and it's bright red. So I'm
Yeah.
just like, what?
It's hard to admit. I can't believe I never noticed. Yeah.
Oh my god, I need to rewatch it.
And there's flowers growing out of it. And it's just really sweet. It's just in the corner of the movie, and I'm just like, oh wow, she kept the bag. That's really sweet. And the reason I didn't mention it earlier is because I believe my moment is off screen. They've had this thing together, they've separated, but it really resonates in her, and she comes to realize that even with the very distinct training he has given her to get rid of everything, destroy everything, leave no trace, she kept it. She kept that. She kept that one thing that's just so unusual and so blatant. And it's in plain sight.
And he would notice.
What's that?
He would notice.
He noticed.
Unlike me.
He noticed the serial number on that bag before he even got into that.
Yeah, so he would notice when she can. And maybe that was the other thing, was like, it's a signal to him, like, you're in the right place.
Well, I don't think he needs that signal. I'm pretty sure he recognized her by her ear or something, even though she has
No, I mean, like, what if she's not there?
Oh,
what if someone else is working that day?
Well, if you've seen his reconnaissance skills, I think he knows everything, and she cannot be there. And the point
Stake the
is,
store out for a week before he went in to talk to her.
TripAdvisor was probably going, and so he would have seen the photos and.
That was my approach to romance before Diana. Is like I would like reconnoiter for 2 weeks before I would ever like talk to a girl. So I was a very nervous teenager.
Yeah.
Weren't we having this whole conversation how it takes us an average of 6 weeks to buy any piece of electronics of any sort? So it's kind of the same thing.
He researched me for 6 weeks before he
That's the average.
before he got asked out by me because I got tired of waiting.
Yeah, no, it's not. No, yeah, you ambushed me like a guy on a zip line with a submachine gun just bursting through the window. Want to go see a movie? Like, okay. That was how we got started.
To say no.
No, I did. I learned from Matt Damon. You give consent, you give it out.
I mean, you don't have to go see a movie with me.
I dyed his hair.
It's when you wash out the dye. That's when the magic happens.
Only when he starts getting grace will I dye his hair.
All right, so so you think it happened off screen?
No, that's for her. Yeah, well, yeah, for her and for him. So hers was when she decided to keep that, and for him, it was when he finally achieved what he was after in terms of making sure they were no longer on his tail, which of course never works out. His decision to go looking for her, because he presumably could have decided that it's best for her to not, but it's more important for them to be together. Because, and it's not the whole like him overriding that common sense, but it's also, yes, he could protect her, but I think the safest thing to do would be to leave her alone.
Yeah, well, it's safe for him as well, right? Because they're tied together now.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
but in this
with paperwork,
his decision to go find her was his moment.
Oh, that's so nice. I kind of have two that I can decide. So one is the cynical one. So
we'll get to that into what happens next.
Wait.
Well, actually, I don't know. This is a hard one for the what happens next, but regardless, I think that the like cynically, I would say that they fall in love after the car chase, which is like the so now they've had two things where actually I'm gonna amend that. Like after that first moment, you know, when the first when they're in the Paris apartment, when like there's been altercation, Numa gets killed, and because one of the things that makes people fall in love is sharing sharing adrenaline filled activities together early on in the relationship. Like that is a big, huge, like kind of chemical reaction, which is why on The Bachelor and Bachelorette, they do think, and you know, a lot of these dating shows, they do things like going, you know, they go on a plane, they go zip glides, like lining. They do these things to build all of this to kind of, they're trying to create an artificial environment.
They assassinate dictators.
That's the assassination day camp that they go to just for the week.
So much adrenaline.
On St. Croix. So I want to be cynical about that, but actually listening to you guys talk, I think that it's when they have to part in the car, like when she drives him from Zurich to Paris and standing outside the apartment, and they realize that there's logistics, but then that they can't, that it makes every logical sense for them to separate at that point. Like for her, he's obviously trouble.
Transaction complete.
I mean, she said, this is the great thing. Like there's all these moments where she does call him. Like she calls him out. She's like, what kind of person pays $20,000 in the age of Eurostar to like go from Zurich to Paris? Like, you know, even the first class trains are not $20,000.
He's acting all weird when the police car goes by. And
like
lots of little
just,
clues. Yeah.
And the thing is, she is obviously also has been like going under, you know, used to going like to living outside the law, but like.
Hang on, Judgy McJudgerson.
What
kind of person accepts $20,000 to give?
Well, this is her point. I mean, this is her point, but I mean, I'm saying that as a movie, that's why it's like, it feels very true, because it's not like, oh my God, are you kidding? Like you never asked the guy? Like you don't have those moments, because she does. When she finds out he's an assassin, she's not like, oh, well I didn't know that. You know, let me tell you something about my horseback riding career that you didn't know about. Like, she's like, oh,
nor even does she think it's sexy.
She's like, this is awful. Like, you know, this was great until we found out who you really were. Mm-hmm. And now we know. And it's not good. Like, I didn't just find that. It's not like you just found out you were an ex-Olympic gymnast. Like, you know?
Well, and it could be still.
I mean, he still could be, yeah. But, but I guess my point is, like, but I think in that moment, that you sit there and you go, and we're like, the fact that it made no sense for them to, like, not to not separate, but that they emotionally they realized that it made no sense for them to separate, and it was a really, you know, and there's all this stuff about like they're in the apartment, and it's kind of like at once he has to find out who he is, but then also it's this thing of like, okay, now I'm in the guy's apartment. Like, what do I do? And so she's like going into while he's trying to find out who he is, she's like going through the medicine cabinet and like
trying to take a shower.
Trying to take a shower and like.
Did she use his toothbrush?
Oh my God, she did.
We were talking about that. I'm trying to think.
I'm hoping, because this is how I did it, is like she just found a spare toothbrush.
Or like I was trying to think, like, did she bring a bag in with her or something? Because
she did.
Because she's obviously traveling. She would have her own toothbrush in the trunk, and maybe she came in with the intent to use the bathroom. Because if she's been living on the road for some time, she probably had the whole like take a shower plan in there. I could see her bringing some toiletries in from the car. So
well,
Well, at least she probably has a toothbrush in her bag. She's a freewheeling girl. She
Yeah.
probably just keeps a toothbrush. in
Well,
her
no,
bag.
I think that's why she's very free-spirited. I think that's why she doesn't have a toothbrush in there, and I really don't think that she's carrying her toiletries. But my observation on the movie is that she had a blue toothbrush, then all of a sudden that blue toothbrush was in the holder. So,
Oh.
Okay.
So I'm gonna say,
All right, maybe she just uses toothbrush, which is also a sign of intimacy. But
I don't think that
kind
was
of gross.
It's a little premature.
Or maybe we don't know. Whatever. Bad
very-
planning
it
on
was a very
the
quick one, though, so.
the part. Well, yeah, I've been sort of sitting around for a while because he died several weeks before. But he, yeah. So I don't know. Those are between like the romantic part of me is like that moment when they were leaving the car first, and then the cynical part of me is when they,
Cuddled?
when they right after the car chase. Because it's like this adrenaline filled moment.
Is that what they call cuddling?
No, well, I mean, first there was the haircut, and then there was the cuddling.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're talking about the post-car chase adrenaline surge?
Mm-hmm.
Just like in Speed.
Just like in Speed.
Mm-hmm. Enough with Polina, it's okay.
But I think the romantic part of me thinks it's when they were getting out.
Well, then we'll call it that then.
Let's do it.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so this is kind of difficult. So I want to introduce the segment of what happens next. However,
Mm-hmm.
We have to contemplate some alternate continuities?
no.
Or... Okay, what?
Let me finish.
Okay.
So what's very important is
Mhm.
that we have created a precedent with The Cutting Edge, as
Yes.
written by Tony Gilroy. So may I go first?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we've established the precedent that if you go back to our Cutting Edge episode, Cutting Edge has various sequels that created a debate among us that because these sequels were not, in Polina's perspective, canon because they were written by various other people, apparently not Tony Gilroy, then therefore they are irrelevant, therefore we don't have to take them as the actual future.
Does this policy apply only to Tony Gilroy?
Let me get there.
So far, perhaps.
So therefore, when we look at when we did Before Sunrise,
Mm-hmm.
that was all Richard Linklater with Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, and it was all written and performed by these important people, written and directed by, performed by, so therefore you maintained it as canon, therefore it is solid.
Mm-hmm.
It's
So
very
we didn't do
important to make note. Tony Gilroy did write The Bourne Supremacy.
Yes, this was my thing, and I was meant to discuss this with you, but
So,
instead I
so-
made you run errands.
So
with
we'll-
me
Do we need to
instead.
fill in the plot significance of...
Oh, allow me. Go ahead. Finish your sentence, and then allow me.
What were you going to talk about what happens in the movie?
Yeah,
Or?
I was going to talk about The Bourne Supremacy.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. It's very
Am I going to get to gripe about the sequels? Unlike the rest of the sequels?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
I have a bone to pick with a few of those movies, but go ahead.
Just one.
Two that I can think of.
Okay.
Not enough sweaters. That is my big bone that I have to pick with him.
What I think is important is again with my razor sharp Bourne focus.
Mm-hmm.
When we went to go see The Bourne Supremacy in the theater, off center because I knew that I was going to get a headache.
Because you're not an animal.
I remember the trailers. It was all about Bourne and the action and holy crap, Joan Allen is in this movie. This is going to be awesome. And then the movie gets started. And Franka Potente, I'm like, she's nowhere near in the trailers. They're going to kill her off in the first
I was
20
very
minutes.
disappointed with myself for not seeing that coming.
That's my big bone to pick. I
Yeah.
just am really mad at Joan. Thank God for Joan Allen,
She's very cool.
She can't do everything.
but she
Yeah.
can't do everything.
Can't carry the
and seriously, like Franka Potente in like the first 10. That's just it makes me very unhappy.
Isn't this a trope? They fridged the girlfriend.
Yeah, that's like a thing from comic book fandom. Stuffed in the fridge, I think is the phrase.
Stuff in the fridge. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes up in various other movies. It's just like, hey,
Yeah.
we need a reason for this protagonist to get really angry and go do some stuff. Let's kill off the girlfriend.
Yeah,
Damn it, it was Carl.
but why
Urban
does it have
too.
to be Franka Potente?
Because
Yeah.
they couldn't get.
Franka Potente.
No.
And it
I'm
wasn't-
doing this all wrong.
I mean,
I was gonna say Audrey Tautou.
Why would you kill off Audrey Tautou?
Because Franka Potente wasn't available.
and I remember when I saw that movie, I was, like I said, I was a bit disappointed that I didn't see the writing on the wall the same way you did. And Yeah, I remember just kind of like going through it in my head, like, well, yeah, I guess like purely from a plot perspective, this is kind of necessary because they need to answer the question of like, why are they not just off living a domestic life somewhere like sensible people would do, and they can't just keep having like danger kicked down their door every 5 minutes because that would just get tiresome and unrealistic. So.
I don't do that, Joan Allen. I'm retired now.
I like the only thing that I remember, actually I was telling my good friend John, about this movie, about that I had to go home and watch this movie because we're all having lunch, and he goes, wait, did they kill off the Run Lola Run girl in that one? Because he's like, I love that movie. And then he goes, and he's like, oh. And then I got really, really, really upset. Like I just got really anxious and like kind of emotional. And then, not on him, just, privately, because I'm an adult. And then we both were kind of like getting all upset. And then he goes, it's the second one. And then I relaxed. I felt so much better. I was like, this is bad. I'm on the middle of Hate Street and I might just start to scream and cry because I don't want to go see this movie because I don't want to watch her die.
That was HAIGHT because if you're full of that much rage, you could be on Hate Street.
Oh, I like it.
We'll
yes.
just be angry.
Yes. HAIG.
And yeah, I guess
which has its own issues.
I guess I rode the anger of it a little bit, and like, yeah, it does kind of fuel the whole, like, I don't even know if you call it like a revenge plot or a nothing left to lose plot. And I remember mostly enjoying the movie at the time, but I don't think it holds up nearly as well as the first movie does. And in fact, the entire rest of the franchise, I was just reading someone talking about how like the Bourne Identity kind of stands apart in tone from the rest of the series.
Yeah, with
and
a different director.
Yeah, and in hindsight, I mean, besides the director and there was a creative direction, but I also just think the absence of Marie in the rest of the movies really just shifts the formula.
Yeah,
and yeah, I feel the absence.
After the third one, and I am one of the like I give up on sequels. Like I was pretty much done with the third one, and that's.
Oh, and by the time of the last one, can we go on a tangent about databases for a minute here?
Oh yeah, if I will, I will grant. I love this. Like I have some authority over here.
You do.
I will grant this, but I would like.
We
to
are
say,
in your home, and it is your podcast.
Are we in agreement that the fact that
we're not doing this. We're not playing this game.
Okay.
Well, I had a hypothetical
we're using
for
our time to bitch about the rest of the movie.
Yes, that's what
which I
I'm saying.
fully support.
Do I have to choose between them, or do we have time for both?
No, you have to choose.
Really?
Yes. Do you want the seatbelt on, or do you want to get out of the car?
Screw you, I'm doing both. Okay, so
Great, fine. I'm gonna get assassinated by Carl Urban.
no, just go buy a fifth of whiskey. Anyway.
Coming bones.
Okay, my short answer to what the answer would be if this had been the only movie in the franchise is that when I listen to this podcast and play along at home, I generally have this kind of heuristic or rule of thumb for.
Okay, I find that hysterical. It's often filmed. It's often recorded in your home, and you're here.
Yeah.
You are literally playing
along at home on the couch as I'm listening to you talk around the table.
Or sometimes in my home,
I'm gonna play
and still doing the same thing.
Is that my heuristic is that does it feel like a stable relationship, or does it feel like a whirlwind movie romance?
Yeah, I think you're right. That is where it kind of falls into.
Yeah, and like this is like maybe still like whirlwind romance compared to like real life, but when you stack it up against movie romances, especially action movie romances, this is like way far down on one end of the spectrum of feeling like a real stable partnership. So if any couple has the right to say they're going to go the distance in some sort of like civilian life continuing after the story, I think it's these two. So that's my answer to that.
Oh,
yeah.
And they did.
I agree.
Until
Urban showed up.
a sad 30 caliber end to that relationship that made me very sad and not invested in the sequel.
Yeah.
Well, the sequel as it was happening. Well, you and I were having a conversation about this. So I remember really enjoying the Bourne Ultimatum. That's the third one. I skipped the Bourne Legacy because the reviews weren't very good. Amazing cast though.
Wait. So it's Bourne Identity.
Bourne Supremacy.
Bourne Supremacy.
Bourne
Ultimatum. And then Legacy is the one that Matt Damon wasn't in.
Yes,
So
except
I definitely gave up on that one.
Well-
I think I gave up after the second one, now that I think about it.
the Bourne Legacy.
I
That's
think it was
true.
on a plane or something, I don't know.
And the last one is Jason Bourne. And
That friggin' movie.
okay, so
I saw about 30 minutes of that and just gave up.
well, for unrelated reasons, but
Well, not entirely, but
well, allow me. So, this is what was really frustrating, and when you pointed this out to me about how Marie and their relationship is what really grounded the series, I had these interesting like memories, if you will, flashes, because I had forgotten, and then they came back to me of Nikki, played by Julia Stiles,
Mm-hmm.
and how she is in all of them with him. And
yeah,
how
we haven't talked about Nikki at all, but she is an interesting enigma of a character, even just in this
Yes.
first movie, and
Yeah,
they do develop her a bit.
I kind of forgot, like, when I saw her again, I was like, oh my god, yeah, this was Julia Stiles. And this is like a Julia Stiles thing, who I really like. And I was like, I couldn't remember if it was the second one or the first one that she played a bigger role, but I remember being kind of fascinated by that character. But yeah.
well, they decided to grow her in the second one.
Mhm.
And then the third one,
Which was a good move.
she helps him out. And by the time Jason Bourne rolled around, she had like a very, what really, really upset me is that I couldn't remember where it was, but they were trying to shoehorn her into this thing that I thought was really frustrating, because in the second one, she was a little bit more fleshed out, but she was more interesting. In the third one, there was kind of like a connection to them that was pretty interesting, and there was alluding to the fact that they had known each other. But by the time Jason Bourne, that movie, was out there, there was this blatant thing that just truly pissed me off. She's just like, oh, you don't remember, do you? And it's just like, oh, they had, or did they, or didn't they, but did they? And I'm just like, oh, you're trying to do that thing that I thought would have sucked in the first one if it was done incorrectly. Don't try to shove a Marie thing onto him.
And also, why does she even have to ask whether he remembers? She was literally standing in the room when he was telling Chris Cooper's character that he doesn't remember anything.
Yeah.
She was standing there listening.
It makes no sense.
Yeah.
No, it was just very frustrating, and it's just, and then I don't even know if we should spoil that movie. You know, they just decided to bury her and Jason Bourne.
Oh, did they? Like I said, I didn't finish that movie.
Oh, right. I forgot. You had already checked out by then. No, she dies.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
She does.
That's important information.
Because she had another movie, didn't she?
Well, yeah, I was just so distracted by the before I had even seen that movie, there was this whole internet meme out of this one like really egregious line in the beginning. You might remember this, where they're going through like the secret like hacker hideout, I guess, in Russia. And Polina, we talked about this. I think contemporarily we talked about this. The use SQL to corrupt their databases.
I do remember that.
There's only one corrupt SQL here, and
I think actually I was debating seeing it, and then we had that conversation. I'm like,
and of course I was
$14. I'll never get it.
And I was forewarned about that because it was all over the internet. So I was like, okay, yeah, fine. That's like some silly throwaway line. But then like 5 minutes after that, there's this whole like plot thing where I guess I don't even remember. Was it Nikki who was trying to hack into the CIA database? Yeah. And then it's like cutting back and forth between there and the Russian hacker hideout in the CIA offices, and then in the CIA they've detected like, oh, someone's gained access to our database, and in 5 more minutes they'll have all our files. Like, turn it off.
Yeah, like you just sit there. Like,
how important
work?
How important
Don't
is
you
your
have like a escalation process?
how important is your
least?
uptime right now?
Yeah,
you have some kind of like 5 nines SLA with your field agents or something.
Just like, oh no, we usually give it like 5 minutes just to see if they're gonna get all of our files. No.
Just
Also,
yank the power
where's
cord
their
right out of the
monitoring?
wall.
Like their monitoring is bullshit. Anyway, okay.
And
I have a lot of issues. At least like it is the equivalent of like they're hacking with HTML and CSS. Like at least,
Right.
it's like no.
And now the listeners know what I have to deal with.
Yes.
Brian and I used to work together, for those of you who don't know.
Sometimes with a sequel.
Sometimes with sequel, yeah.
There's a lot of intimacy. I don't know if I should be. If you dye her hair, I swear to God.
Yeah, no, it's over. That's when you know. That's bad. Hey, Polina, your hair looks. Oh shit.
Allow me to cut out a clump of hair for you.
Well, she's given me more fashion advice.
Yeah.
No more sweaters.
Just trying to move. No, you look, actually, the last time we were buying clothes together, I did try to push 2 sweaters on you, and I told you looked very good in them.
That is true. One of them's right.
Beginning of anything.
One of them's right over there on the couch.
Exactly.
I think.
It's my birthday.
Yes.
All right. I was there for witnessing it all. It's fine.
Yeah.
No hair was dyed.
No hair was dyed, though.
We're
That's
fine. All right. Hey, there it is.
Yeah, we did that movie.
So much of intimacy.
Well,
Yep.
thank you so much, Ryan. That was awesome. Thank you for the movie, which I really enjoyed. And also, thank you for talking to us about intimacy and action.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. This is a lot of fun. And Diana, thank you for indulging my extended ending.
We will allow it. This once.
Maybe. We can edit this, right?
Yeah.
All right. So thank you so much for joining us. And if you like this, you can please tell a friend about us. We are Happily Ever Aftermath, available on iTunes and Google Play and
Spotify?
We're on YouTube now too.
I know, you do all the things.
Yeah, and if you have any comments on this, you can reach us on Facebook at Happily Ever Aftermath.
Mm-hmm.
We're on Twitter at HEAMCast.
HEAMCAST.
And you can also reach us by email, contact@heamcast.com. If you want to check out any other awesome podcasts hosted by some amazing friends of ours, you can look up on all the social medias, #LadyPodSquad.
There's some great, amazing, fun, super fantastic podcasts about anything that you may be interested in.
So we were just talking about, what is it, the MLM podcasts, the multi-level marketing ones.
Yes.
Yeah. I think
kind of. That's a rabbit hole I've fallen down
I'm
with.
kind of worried
recently.
about opening up that door.
Yeah.
But okay. So our next episode, we're going to be talking about the movie Nicolas Cage, Bridget Fonda, It Can Happen to You.
And it may happen to you. I'm gonna forget it. I try to make it that fun. I'm gonna so that'll be next time.
Yep. All right.
All right. Well,
Until then.
yes, we'll see you soon.